Welcome to another military interview by the Sons of History. I'm Dustin Bass. In this interview, I will be speaking with Jack Hamlin, a World War II veteran of the United States Coast Guard who was part of the D-Day invasion at Omaha Beach, where he saved the lives of countless wounded soldiers from drowning in the English Channel. Now, the purpose behind these military interviews is not so much to talk about the wars themselves, but to get the perspective, the soldiers' perspective of what they saw and what they did. So without further ado, I present to you the war story of Jack Hamlin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, I've got Jack Hamlin on the line. Jack, how are you doing?
I couldn't be any better today. It's 86 degrees. It's a beautiful day in Springfield, Missouri.
So Jack, speaking of Springfield, Missouri, you were born October 15th, 1921. You're 100 years old.
I believe that's correct. 100 years. I'll be 101 October the 15th, 22.
What was it like? I want to start early in your life. What was it like 100 years ago in Springfield, Missouri?
I was just talking to my friend here, and we were discussing the population. I can remember when it was 70,000. Now we're pretty close to 200,000. I grew up on the north side of Springfield, we had a Frisco Railroad go through Springfield, Missouri. It's now the Burlington Railroad. And all the people that worked for the Frisco Railroad lived on the north side of Springfield. It was kind of a two-district town, the south side of town and the north side of town. And the north side was called the Rabbit Patch. So I lived in the Rabbit Patch in the north side of Springfield, Missouri.
So you grew up, I assume, playing baseball early on. Is that correct?
I started out, yes, sir, in junior high school. We had a team. Then in high school, I started playing baseball. I was a second baseman and had a great shortstop by the name of LaRue Savage, who signed with the Cleveland Indians. We had a real good team that year in Springfield at the high school.
Now, I bring that up because later in life, you started playing baseball professionally, right?
Yes, sir. Tom Greenway, the old scout for the Yankees. He also, by the way, Tom Greenway is the one who signed Jackie Robinson for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Well, he signed Mickey Mantle also. But one day he came by my house and said, Jack, I need a utility player down at Joplin, Missouri, which was the minor farm team for the Yankees. So I signed with them to be a utility player in Joplin, Missouri for 2 years.
That's amazing. Now, you played minor league ball, and then you ran into a situation where you got sick. You've got rheumatic fever. Tell me about that.
I did. I got what they call a sore throat. And from the sore throat, I caught a rheumatic fever. Well, at the time, it was a disease. Nobody had a cure for it. But I had a doctor by the name of Dr. Fitch. And Dr. Fitch found this sulfanilamide pill. And I was in the hospital with 3 other patients who had rheumatic fever. Those 3 passed away because they did not get the pill. I got the pill, the sulfanilamide, saved my life.
So you end up getting sick. Your life is saved by this pill, by this doctor who prescribes it for you.
Yes, sir.
2 years later, we have the outbreak of war from our perspective because we get bombed at Pearl Harbor. You decide to enlist in the Marines. What happened? What happened there?
There were 4 friends of mine. We were in the Boy Scout troop together. The 4 of them signed up for the Marines and wanted me to sign up. But my doctor said, Jack, you're no condition. You got the enlarged heart, they found out, and you won't be getting the Marines. But I went down also with Bob Barker, a friend of mine, and I tried to join the Naval Air Corps next, and they turned me down also. Well, then I found 2 boys that I played ball with, and they said, Jack, we've enlisted in the United States Coast Guard. I had no idea really what the Coast Guard was, what they would do. They only said Coast Guard, and I figured, well, I'll stay here and I'll see no combat. Not that I wanted that, but that's what I figured in my mind. But I ended up in the Coast Guard on Omaha Beach. It's something else.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about that, but I do want to touch on the two things that you just mentioned. And yes, he said Bob Barker. That means the Bob Barker. And I do want to touch on Bob Barker a little bit later as far as the people that you've met, the people that you know. But the guys that you were going to join in with at the Marines, you said there were four or three or four of them. They ended up.
There were three of them: Jim Gore, Alan Dorn, Frank Foster. There's three of them, and Bill Billings. And the three of them returned. Bill Billings was killed on Iwo Jima.
Wow.
They all four participated on Iwo Jima, and three of them survived, but one did not.
That's incredible. So now we jump from not being able to get into the Marines, not being able to get into the Navy, and to an extent, because you survived the rheumatic fever by really miracle that your doctor came across that drug that saved your life. Almost to an extent, your life was saved from not having to go into Iwo Jima. But with that, you were actually able to join the Coast Guard and save a lot of lives. I want to talk first about getting into the Coast Guard and then being stationed over in England. What was it like being in the Coast Guard and then getting over to England?
I didn't quite get your question there, but I was stationed. I went over on a Liberty. I'm trying to think. We took our Coast Guard cutters, put them on Liberty ships. There was another Coast Guard cutter and mine put on one Liberty ship, and we went to Poole, England to be stationed ready for the invasion. Of course, at that time, I didn't know what we were going to do. I knew nothing about the invasion. All I knew was that I was headed towards France sooner or later to be in the war.
So how long were you in Poole, England?
I think to be honest with you, I don't remember the dates. I had them written down in a manual of mine. And when I sold my house, I lost it. Anyway, I got there, I think, around April the 1st, and we were there the entire time until we left for the invasion.
So tell me about the cutter. You had, I think it was 60 cutters. How big were they? How many
cutters, Coast Guard cutters, and they were divided up into 5 beaches. There was 15 of us went to Omaha Beach, 15 to Utah, and then the others were divided up in the Canadian and the British beaches. But I was one of the 15 that went to Omaha Beach.
So how big were these cutters and how many guys were in there?
We were 83 foot long. We carried 900 gallons of gas. We were 2 props, 2 propellers. Our top speed was about 20 knots. We had a crew of 13, and it included an ensign was our commanding officer.
So there are 13 guys on there. What was your job?
My job was the boatswain's mate, nothing more than just whatever the ensign asked me to do, I would carry that order to the other crew members. At the time when we were working in the United States, we were chasing submarines out of Newport, Rhode Island, and we had 8 depth charges on the stern. We had 2 50-millimeter guns, and we had a 20-millimeter gun on our 83-foot cutter.
So you get out there into England. You're part of the D-Day invasion. How long did it take you to get? How many hours did it take to get over to the beaches of Normandy?
You know, it's 70 miles over there. I have no idea. We had to follow a convoy, and we couldn't go any faster than 9 or 10 knots. As fast as a Liberty ship, the LSTs and all that were going in.
So there is a story that I know you and I have discussed it.
Yes.
You are on your way to the beaches and you see an LST number 50 and you recognize it. What was that about?
Well, I had a letter from home, And my mother told me that a friend of mine, Ralph Carter, who played football and baseball with in Springfield, that he was on LST 50 and he was in charge. He was a lieutenant. Well, of all the ships, 5,000 ships going for the invasion, and it's dark, and I look up, we come alongside the little convoy that we're going in, and I see LST 50. So I asked the skipper, I said, Skip, let's get a little closer there. I want to yell. So it's dark as can be, and I yell up there. I said, do you happen to have a Ralph Carter aboard? Somebody did hear me, and they came, yes, we got a Ralph Carter. He's our commanding officer. Well, in a few minutes, he did come. We were still alongside, going along easy. And he said, who's down there? And I said, Ralph, this is Jack Hamlin. And he said, Jack, what are you doing on that rowboat? That kind of got to me. And I said, Ralph Carter, you may be the commander of that LST, but if you're sunk, you're the last SOB that I'll pick up out of the water. I remember that from going across for D-Day.
That's hilarious. It's so funny that you guys are going into D-Day and you're still able to have that sense of humor, which is incredible. It's amazing. So speaking of getting into the water, that was your job during the D-Day invasion. You and I have discussed this prior. More or less, it was 2.5 days of you and another guy swimming in the water, finding soldiers. Tell me what that was like.
Well, it's hard to describe. We didn't stay in the water very long because there were so many bodies that you could see out there that we'd get alongside. Some of the times I didn't even have to go in the water. We had hooks and we'd catch on to them. But most of the time I would have to dive in. They had a line tied around me. And I don't remember how far out, but I didn't go up probably no more than 30 or 40 feet as far as the line is concerned. And they chose us as a rescue swimmer because we were the smallest two boys. The larger boys stayed aboard our cutter so they could be there when we pull the bodies of the wounded or drowning soldiers to the hull of our cutter. They could pick them up. Then after everybody picked up, it was left to our ensign, our commander, to say, we've got enough. We've got to take them to a hospital ship. And the hospital ship would be 10 miles offshore out of the range of the German guns. Then we would take them out.
Did y'all start searching for bodies while the invasion was going on, or was it after it was over?
No, during the invasion, sir. And you know what? I don't ever remember seeing the beach. We got as close as, I was told by some of my crew members that, Jack, we got as close, he estimated 500 yards from the beach. That's the closest we even got to the beach.
So can you take me through what it was like when you had to dive into the water and go grab a soldier?
I had never seen a wounded person. I'd never seen a dead person. This was a shock to me. I really couldn't explain to you right now how my feelings were then. All I know is that I was scared to death the whole time. And it was on my mind. Well, I survived. Something you were thinking about, but you had to bring these wounded soldiers and the drowning soldiers. You had to get them out of the water as quick as could be. And that meant I had to get out of the water also. That water was cold. It was probably around, I've heard 42 degrees. Now that's awful cold for water to be in. All I had on was a pair of dungarees, tennis shoes, and a Navy shirt.
Wow. Yeah. And trying to swim with that along with the line on must have been even more difficult.
It was, sir. I couldn't tell you, but my memory is good, but I don't remember enough if I had any trouble with any of them or not. I don't think I had a bit of trouble with anybody when I would grab a hold of them and pull them towards my cutter. I don't remember having trouble with any of them. They were as happy as I was to get them out of the water.
So there are 60 cutters spread across 5 beaches. Do you know how many soldiers y'all saved?
Yes. The actual facts were that we saved 1,486 wounded or drowning soldiers that day and 1 female British nurse. We didn't get her, but one of the other cutters on the English beach, Sword, I believe it was. She was a nurse. And she happened to be on an LST, and she was blown off, as I understand, off the LST in the water. And Dick McFall was the skipper of the, I think it was number 19 cutter, and he's the one to pull the British nurse out of the water.
Now, you and I have discussed how many y'all were able to put on each cutter and take back 10 miles to really the hospital ships and then come back. About how many were y'all able to put on each cutter?
You know, I've asked that question. I've had answers. I had one crew member tell me, Jack, we couldn't take more than 20. I had another one said, Jack, we had 30, maybe more than 30 on deck. They couldn't go down below, so we had to keep them on deck and keep them covered there. Then it was left to the skipper to say, we've got enough, we've got to leave the beach, we've got to get them to the hospital ships. So I would say, in my opinion, the most we ever saved was probably 25 on that day. I've heard it. Now, Lieutenant McPhail on the number 19, he did save 117. And I do remember that he got the Navy Cross. He was one Coast Guard boy, Lieutenant Dick McPhail from North Carolina, got the Navy Cross for saving 117 on D-Day.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible, especially, I mean, that's...
To me, it's incredible. I don't know how he ever got 117 on.
Right. I mean, that's, as you said, that's about 4 or 5 times more than what y'all are on average putting in your boat. An absolute miracle.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to touch on one of the guns that you had on the cutter was, as you said, a 20 millimeter.
Yes, sir.
When did you use it and how did you use it at one point in time?
Well, the only time I ever first used it was when we were stationed in Newport, Rhode Island. We would go out in Atlantic and take gun practice. They let us shoot the 20 millimeter. So that's the only time that I ever got to shoot the 20 millimeter. But on the D-Day, second day of D-Day, when the 2 German planes were going over, the gunner's mate was in the water. And so one of the other crew members said, Jack, you've shot the 20 millimeter, get on there. Everybody else is shooting that German plane. Well, we just so happened to have a Commander Stewart we had picked up off the Augusta battleship, and he wanted to go into shore. That's the only reason we had this Coast Guard Commander Stewart aboard. And he happened to witness some of my shells going into this German plane, probably along with other shells also. But he wrote up and gave me the citation that I did shoot down the last of the German planes over the beach.
That's incredible. What did you think when you heard that you actually hit the German plane?
Well, I couldn't tell you what I actually felt when I did it. But when I got home, there was an article in the paper. Very nice article my mother had saved for me, telling about how Jack Hamlin shot the last of the German airplanes on D-Day. And that's the reason I remember it so well.
Huh. That's awesome. So D-Day comes to an end. Your 2.5 days out there comes to an end. You go back to Poole, am I correct?
You're correct. We had to go back for fuel. We were running out of fuel.
So while you were there in Poole, what happened after D-Day? What did you do after D-Day?
Well, now you're getting kind of personal, but I fell in love with a nurse. Well, it ended up, I went with her about 6 months. Beautiful girl. And she happened to went to Cherbourg to be a nurse in the American hospital there. And I met a French lady, and she heard about my romance. She said, Jack, if you ever return to Normandy, I'll find out where that girl, the nurse is. Well, she found out, she became a nurse, and she was the #1 Paris model. Her name was Jacqueline Maietti. I got that, I had a picture of her. So that was my little love affair.
So that pretty much took up your time.
It took all my time, very happily.
So it was Jack and Jacqueline. That sounds perfect.
Exactly. And it's when I had my first child with my wife, knew who I named her? I named her Jacqueline.
Beautiful. Now, I want to talk about the first time that you and Jacqueline met. I believe it was the first time. If I understand correctly, it was Christmas Eve, 1944. Is that correct?
That's right. On Christmas Eve, I had met a sergeant who was in charge of the food for the American hospital. And he said, Jack, I'm going to come down to your cutter on Christmas Eve. I'll bring some wine, I'll bring some turkey, and I'll bring 2 nurses, French nurses. I said, that'll be wonderful. What I'll do, I'll take 4 of my crew who are the best looking ones, and I'll let them go in town on Cherbourg and go to a bar and let them enjoy themselves. And we'll get rid of the good looking boys. Well, he did. He brought the 2 nurses down. That's when I met the Jacqueline. And about 6 o'clock that evening, we was getting ready to have a drink of wine. And I got a call. There's trouble out at buoy number 5, 5 miles off Cherbourg, and there's trouble. Well, it ended up being the Leopoldville ship carrying the 66th Infantry Division with 2,200 aboard, and we lost 865 or something like that on Christmas Eve.
So, how many? It was your cutter. Who all else was able to get out there to the Leopoldville?
There was a lot of tugs went out there. There's only 2 Coast Guards that I know of. Number 5 was also with us in Cherbourg. He went out there. There was one British corvette came by and picked up 3. I read later that they had picked up 300 survivors off of the sinking Leopoldville. But that night, we saved probably 15 or 20. And that's the night I remember that the only thing that I regret, I had a line tying around me again, and I was in the water, and one soldier was drifting away from me, and my line wouldn't go any further, and I couldn't reach for him, and I can remember him crying. That's the only thing I regret the whole war.
After the Leopoldville, you get back to England, or you get back to France. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're now stationed in Cherbourg.
Yes, sir.
So you were
At
there.
Cherbourg, we come back to Plymouth, England, to be transported back home.
Okay,
And I remained in Cherbourg probably for 6-7 months.
So were you in Cherbourg until the end of the war, until May of 45?
Yes. One more thing. On May the 9th of 19, we were ordered to take a general with the Army, can't remember his name, and Commander Art of the Coast Guard to the Guernsey Island, where we and other 2 LST, I believe it was, we accepted the surrender of the Germans on Guernsey Island. And that was in 45, May the 9th.
So you were part of the surrender of the Germans in May.
Yes, sir.
That had to be pretty thrilling to be a part of it, because did you drive the boat?
I drove the boat, yes. As a matter of fact, which I've skipped all over, but after the invasion, half of my crew was sent back to the United States, and they were prepared for the invasion of Japan. So I was left with just half a crew after D-Day.
After May, after the surrender of the Germans, how much longer did you stay? Did you stay in England until the Japanese surrendered, or did you leave shortly after the Germans surrendered?
I came home in November. I got home on November the 5th of 1945.
All right. So you stayed over there, and with you leaving, that was the end of your relationship with Jacqueline. Is that correct?
That was the end until this French lady fixed me up. She had deceased, but I got to meet her daughter and her 2 granddaughters, and I met them in Cherbourg for dinner.
Now, when did you get to go do that?
This was last July. Last year, I've become friends with Marie Pascal Legrand. She's one of the wealthiest women in France, and she takes care of her Sir Charles Norman Shea, number one medic. I call him the number one medic on Omaha Beach. He was the first cavalry, he, all kinds of honors, and I've met him several times. And she is the one that found out that I'd gone with the nurse, and she became model, and she found the daughter and the two grandchildren, and we all had dinner in Cherbourg together. She arranged it all for me, July of last year.
So there remains a real French connection for you, one with that family, but also what is around your neck. Describe what's around your neck.
Well, this is the Legion of Honor that the French gave me on, I believe, in June of 2014. I went back over, and the Admiral of the Coast Guard was there with the Honor Guard. And the French minister awarded me, and I received the Legion of Honor from the French people. That's the highest award awarded to any Allied soldier or sailor that the French can give.
Well, that's incredible, and such a huge honor for you to have. I mean, that's just fantastic. Now, you've gone back to Normandy several times. So you've gone back to France several times. How many times have you gone back?
This will be, I leave again the end of this month, the 31st. It'll be my 7th trip back. The people in Normandy are wonderful to us. I mean, honestly, I bet you, I've kissed over 500 women. I don't care whether they were 90 years old or 12 years old. I love them all. And the first thing you're there, they want to grab you. It's not you grab them. They want to come to you, shake your hand, hug you, give you a kiss, which I'm willing to do. They are wonderful, wonderful people to returning veterans.
So how does that make you feel, being celebrated and being appreciated like that every time you go over there?
I tell you what, my head is big enough, but I've got an ego that I'm not afraid to brag on myself, and I do an awful lot of it because each trip that I've gone back, I've met somebody new. I've had the honor of having dinner with Helen Patton, General Patton's granddaughter. And as a matter of fact, I was talking with her today on the computer and messaging back and forth with Helen Patton. We were going to meet this June when I return, but she leaves Normandy on the 2nd of June, and I get there the 1st. So I will not get to meet her again.
So you've met, and you have a relationship, and you've met with General Patton's granddaughter. Now you have a relationship with Eisenhower's granddaughter. Is that correct?
Yes, as a matter of fact, just last month, Mary Jean Eisenhower and I had breakfast together in a day at Marshville, Missouri. They were having a festival going on, and she asked me to come over, and I did. She still lives in Kansas, and she came over, and we had breakfast and lunch together and visited all day long. Then I've also been with Sarah, her sister, daughter of General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, also in France. I had dinner with her twice, Suzanne, and I have pictures of both of them on my wall in my apartment.
Wow. So let's discuss a little bit about you coming back home after the war is over. You get married, you get to work. What happened? What was life like after you came back?
Well, I came home, and Tom Green asked me to play baseball one more year. So I went up to what they call the Northern League and played just 1 year and managed a team up there for him. Then I came home, and my father and all his family were lawyers, and they wanted me to be a lawyer. And I did graduate from law school at Missouri University, but I took the bar examination twice, never did pass it. And I tell you, it's a good thing I didn't, because I do not have and never have had the patience to study and read a book like the law books are. And anyway, my mother told me one time, Jack, let me tell you what your grandfather did. It's back in the olden days. He said, on those days, they had little inkwells on the desk of the lawyers, and Judge Kirby was the judge. And my grandfather, Hamlin, got mad at Judge Kirby because he ruled against him in the case. My grandfather picks up this inkwell and throws it at the judge, Judge Kirby. Yes. He was fined $15. That's all they did to him. So that's one reason that it's pretty good I didn't become a lawyer, because I don't have the patience.
Yeah, you would have possibly thrown something equivalent to an inkwell.
No telling what I'd find. That's right.
Absolutely.
I'm
So,
sorry about that up, but it's just a memory I have.
so you started an insurance company. You did that for a long
Yeah.
time, very successful, and then you sold the insurance company, correct?
Yes, sir. I joined my cousins. As a matter of fact, one of my cousins resides where I do at the Montclair for senior living. And I joined them, my cousin, they bought my agency. And I stayed with them for about, I'd say 5-6 years. Then I retired. Now, when I became 72, I believe it was.
So you've enjoyed a pretty long and successful retirement, right?
And the way I feel, I've been very lucky, very happy, and have, to me, I've been as successful as I deserved. Thank you.
Now, you and I have a mutual friend by the name of Tracy Hunter. Tell me.
We sure do. And by the way, she's going to meet me in Atlanta on the 31st of May this month, and we travel together back to Normandy.
Well, she's fantastic. How did y'all get in contact with each other?
Dale Lindley, a good friend of hers, he lives in New Mexico. And by the way, he's going to be with me too also. He'll drive me around while we're in Normandy. Dale Lindley knew her real well, and he told Tracy about me, and she came to Springfield and interviewed me. And of course, as we know, you and I, she's won 2 Emmys. She's quite a little girl in the History Channel. So that's how I met her. And she came by to see me about 3 different times, come to visit.
Well, she is fantastic. She does some really wonderful work. That is the one person that you and I both know. Let's talk about a little further on the people that you know. Let's go back a little bit further to Bob Barker. How in God's name do you know Bob Barker?
Bob Barker and I went to high school, went to Drury College together. As a matter of fact, the girl he married lived on East Walnut Street. The girl I was going with lived right across the street from her, Marjorie Mack. She was Dorothy Jo Gideon. My girlfriend was Marjorie Mack. Bob did not have a car that I can remember of. So I was lucky to get Bob and Dorothy Jo and Marjorie Mack and I, and we double dated several times. But we did go to school together and to Drury College together.
And you guys remained friends after that, is that correct?
We were on Facebook for a while, but I know he's still living, but I haven't heard from Bob in a long time. I haven't even sent him a message, but it's been a long time, at least 2 years since I've had a conversation on the computer with him.
Yeah. So Tom Greenwade, one of the great scouts of baseball historically. But let's talk a little bit on baseball regarding somebody that you didn't meet, but you still got his jersey. You ran across a Babe Ruth jersey, right?
Let me tell you the story. Tom Greenwade and I went down to Johnny Bench's induction when he got in the Hall of Fame for dinner. And I drove Tom Greenwade down. But when we got back home, he said, Jack, I've got something for you. My son doesn't want it. He brought me a Babe Ruth traveling jersey, number 3. I had that for a long time. Then at the same time, besides this jersey, he said, Jack, I live on a farm at Willard, Missouri. And he said, in my stall above my barn, there's a whole bunch of bats. And would you like a couple of bats? He named them off, some of the great players of baseball. And I never did go out to get those bats. Then he also had a bunch of jerseys. And what he would do, when he went home, he would take all the old jerseys of the players and take them to the minor leagues to give them to the players to wear. And he said, I also have a bunch of old jerseys up there. And he named them off. I tell you, it's worth a lot of money. But you know what happened? His daughter took those jerseys and made woolen rugs out of them. And yeah, I can imagine each one of those shirts he had would 25, 35, maybe $70,000 in jerseys. It just so happens that I didn't get any of them.
I can't even wrap my head around that. I can't wrap my head around somebody not wanting a Babe Ruth jersey.
That's his son, who is still living, and he's a farmer down in Kimball, Missouri. But he that's what Tom told me anyway. He said, they're not interested at all, Jack. And you've been nice to me. You drive me around. I'll give it to you. So he gave it to me. And I used to had a little farm myself, and I had a pickup truck. And I would take that baseball jersey in my truck. Anybody could have stole it. I'd take it into a bar and have a beer, and I'd take it and show it off. Never having any idea that it was worth anything.
But you sold it, right?
$75,000.
Yep, you. That's incredible. You had $75,000 just walking around with you into bars and
a pickup truck in a bar.
Well, I would say
very lucky about everything.
Yeah, that definitely having that jersey definitely paid off. Another guy that you knew, Eddie Feiner, the King in his court.
Eddie King in his court. Oh yeah, Eddie and I played. Well, the first time I met him, we played. I was in fast pitch after I quit the baseball. I played fast pitch, and we were in a national tournament in Seattle, Washington, facing Eddie Feiner when he pitched for Seattle. My gosh, he threw that ball about. It was recorded 102 miles an hour underhanded. He could throw it from, when he got his king in his court, he would go to second base, put a blindfold on, and still throw the ball from second base over the plate. They had him on Ed Sullivan twice, I think it was, and I forget who it was, Willie Mays and somebody else. He struck out. It showed what that fast pitch is. Eddie Feiner, great friend.
Now, how did you fare against him batting? Did you ever hit him?
No. Yes, in Seattle, I didn't even touch the ball. No, I faced him 3 times, and I'm sure I struck out all 3 times. I don't think I even got a foul ball off of him. He was the greatest fastball pitcher. Well, there was another named Miller out of Memphis that I faced, was real good. But Eddie Feiner was the best fast pitch softball player I ever played against or ever saw.
Yeah, he was huge, definitely for a good while. Now, Donnie Edwards, former NFL player, who is he? How do you know him, and what does he do?
Well, I was very lucky. Last year, on December the 7th, I was invited by he and his wife, Kathleen, to go on a trip with a bunch of veterans to Pearl Harbor. I'd been there before, but my wife, not like this. But it was a wonderful trip. That's how I got to meet Donnie Edwards. That he invited me to go. And I took my daughter and we went to Pearl Harbor with Donnie Edwards. And I think we had about 50 other veterans that he had invited. It's called the Self-Defense Fund. And he and his wife are the founders of the best defense fund in California. So
your daughter goes with you. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, a son.
And you've got
my Julie, he goes with me, went with me in July also, and she's going this time with me also. And she lives in Florida, and Jacqueline and Jeff, my son, live here in Springfield.
Fantastic. You've got grandkids, you've got the whole kit and caboodle.
Everything's fine, I tell you. Wonderful children. They've never caused me a bit of trouble, any trouble at all. They're wonderful. They take care of me. They come by. Anything I want, I've got. I'm really spoiled, I'll tell you that.
So to an extent, you're in Springfield, you're almost treated like royalty. You You've actually spent time with royalty. Didn't you meet the Queen of England?
Oh, yes, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, I got a call at home. And if somebody called me on the phone, and I thought, well, they said, Jack, this is so-and-so. We're calling about you got an invitation to come to England with the Queen of England. Well, I forget the words I use right now. They weren't very good, but I thought I recognized the voice of a man that I knew, and he put a joke on me. Well, he finally said, Jack, don't be so rude. This is Mr. Webster, Brewster of Washington, D.C., the War Department. You will get a call in the morning at 7 o'clock from the British Embassy, and you are being invited to come over, have dinner with the Queen of England on the 50th anniversary of D-Day. Yes, they did get the call. I got the call, talked to him. I said, my wife couldn't go, but I did. I traveled over there and had dinner with the Queen of England. What an honor, what a pleasure.
If you could sort of look back on your life and sort of define it, how would you, or describe it, how would you describe your life?
Everything I've done, I have nothing that I would say is a terrible regret. There are a few things I do regret, but I've been very fortunate to have a good life, good health. I have been sick of different things like the rheumatic fever, but with my children, they never caused me any trouble. I had a beautiful wife. I lost her 12 years ago. Everything has fallen right at my feet. All I had to do is pick it up and use it and do the best I could with it. And I've tried to do that.
Well, Jack, I think you've done an immaculate job with your life. And from me, and I know so many in our nation, we thank you for all that you've done and for, one, your service during World War II, but two, just being such a fantastic person.
Thank you so much. This is another pleasure and another honor. I thank you very much for the interview, and I'd love to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
We hope that you enjoyed this military interview, and we thank you for watching. Before leaving this video, if you can like and leave a comment, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel, it would be greatly appreciated. If you want to find out all that we're doing over at the Sons of History, visit our website, thesonsofhistory.com. Again, thank you for watching.